The silence of forgotten hamlets is a shroud, a heavy blanket, woven with the threads of screams never heard, of shadows that linger long after the sun has bled from the sky. To believe that the quaint postcard image of rural life holds no festering secrets is to court a danger far greater than any city dweller can comprehend. I have seen it, etched in the dust of deserted roads, in the hollow eyes of those who remain, a chilling testament to tales that refuse to be buried. They whisper of pacts made in moonless nights, of entities that feast on isolation, of a primal fear that clings to the very soil. This hour is not for the faint of heart. It is an invitation to peer into the abyssal well of real terror, where the veil between our world and what lurks beyond is thinnest, and the consequences of a single misstep are eternal. The air in these forgotten places doesn't just feel still, it carries the weight of untold sorrows. Imagine a village, a cluster of houses huddled together, as if for warmth against an invisible, encroaching frost. Yet within these walls, a chilling isolation festers. This isn't the loneliness of a single soul. It's a collective dread, a communal understanding that something is wrong. I recall a vision of a place called Oakhaven, a name that now echoes with the sound of dry leaves skittering across a graveyard. The villagers spoke in hushed tones, their eyes darting towards the dense woods that pressed in on all sides, a living, breathing entity of darkness. They told of children disappearing, not with a bang, but with a terrifying silence, as if plucked from existence by an unseen hand. The local priest, his faith a fraying rope, confessed to seeing figures at the edge of his vision, gaunt and spectral, always just beyond the reach of firelight. In one particular tale, the narrative itself seemed to crack, like an old, dry bone. It spoke of a family, the Millers, who moved to a secluded farm, seeking an escape from the city's cacophony. They found it, but not in the way they imagined. The farm was beautiful, bathed in an almost unnatural golden light during the day, a stark contrast to the oppressive darkness that descended with the sunset. Their livestock began to die, not from illness, but from a strange, inexplicable terror. Cows found with eyes wide open, frozen in a silent, eternal scream. Chickens, their necks twisted at impossible angles. The family dog, usually a loyal guardian, would cower in the corner, its body racked with tremors, whimpering at the empty air. The father, a man of science and reason, began to doubt his own sanity as he witnessed these events, the solid ground of his reality crumbling beneath his feet like dried mud. The whispers from Oakhaven spoke of a watcher in the pines, a being that didn't stalk or hunt in the conventional sense. It observed. Its presence was a slow, insidious erosion of the mind, a psychological invasion that left its victims hollowed out. The villagers described a feeling of being constantly appraised, judged by an ancient alien intelligence that resided within the gnarled heart of the forest. This wasn't a creature of flesh and blood, but something far more terrifying, an awareness, a disembodied gaze that seeped into their dreams, turning slumber into a battlefield of the psyche. The local innkeeper, a man known for his hearty laugh, became gaunt, his eyes perpetually wide with a terror that had no name. He claimed to hear the rustling of leaves even on windless nights, a sound that seemed to carry a low, mocking chuckle. Now imagine the sheer, unadulterated dread of realizing that the woods, those seemingly benign expanses of green, are not merely trees, but a sentient, malevolent entity. The Oakhaven community lived with this gnawing certainty. They saw patterns in the way the branches intertwined, in the shadows cast by the ancient oaks, that spoke of deliberate design, of a conscious will guiding the arboreal chaos. The children who went missing weren't lost. They were taken, drawn into the whispering labyrinth by an unseen force that understood their innocence and preyed upon it. The dried blood stains on the old well, tales of which were passed down through generations, were not from accidents. but from something far more sinister, a ritualistic sacrifice to appease the entity that held the village in its suffocating grip. The transcript mentions a specific incident involving a bridge, a structure that in most places signifies connection and passage. Here, it became a threshold to a nightmare. The old wooden bridge, leading out of Oakhaven, was said to be haunted by the spirits of those who had met their end there, not by misadventure, but by a deliberate act of malevolence. The air around it was perpetually colder, and a thick, cloying fog often shrouded it, even on the clearest days. Travelers would report hearing disembodied whispers, fragments of desperate pleas for help, carried on a phantom wind. Some claimed to see fleeting figures, translucent and pale, standing at the edge of the bridge, beckoning them closer, their faces contorted in silent screams, a chilling invitation to join the spectral chorus. This is where the true horror lies, in the erosion of the familiar. The very things that should offer comfort, a home, a community, the natural world, become instruments of terror. The Millers, in their isolated farmhouse, found their well, a source of life-giving water, transforming into a conduit for dread. The water, once clear and pure, began to have a peculiar metallic taste, and at night they would hear faint, rhythmic thumping sounds emanating from its depths. The father, driven to the brink of desperation, lowered a lantern into the well one night. The light revealed not water, but a swirling dark miasma, and for a fleeting moment, he saw a pair of eyes staring back, ancient and filled with an unfathomable malice. The psychological toll on the Oakhaven villagers was profound. It wasn't just fear, it was a creeping paranoia, a distrust of their neighbors, of their own senses. The woods weren't just a backdrop, they were a constant silent threat, and every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig, was interpreted as a harbinger of doom. The elderly residents, those who had lived their entire lives under the watchful eye of the Watcher, carried a weariness that went beyond age. Their stories were not of bravery, but of a slow, agonizing surrender to the inevitable. They spoke of dreams where the trees would bend and whisper secrets, of shadows that detached themselves from their owners and danced with malevolent glee in the moonlight. The story of the abandoned church in a village called Blackwood is particularly chilling. Its steeple, long since rotted and fallen, left a gaping maw in the roof, a dark mouth open to the heavens. Locals claimed that at midnight, when the moon was hidden and the world was shrouded in the deepest black, the church was not empty. They spoke of unholy rites performed within its desecrated walls, of shadows that coalesced into forms that defied natural law, and of a guttural chanting that seemed to emanate from the very stones. The air around the church was said to be thick with the stench of decay, and something else, something metallic and sickeningly sweet, like dried blood mixed with forgotten incense, a scent that clung to the wind for miles. These tales are not mere campfire stories. They are echoes from the edge of reality, fragments of a truth that many are afraid to acknowledge. The darkness that inhabits these rural voids is not a simple lack of light. It is an active, malevolent force. It feeds on isolation, on fear, on the forgotten histories that lie buried beneath the soil like ancient corpses. When the transcript spoke of a cursed artifact, it wasn't referring to a trinket. It was referring to an object imbued with such concentrated dread that it warped the very fabric of its surroundings. Imagine a simple wooden doll, found in an attic, its painted smile a grotesque mockery, its button eyes seeming to follow you, radiating an aura of pure, distilled malevolence. The psychological warfare waged by the entities in these villages is perhaps the most disturbing aspect. They don't always resort to physical violence. Their greatest weapon is the erosion of sanity. The residents of the village described in the transcript found their homes turning against them. Doors would creak open on their own, only to slam shut with violent force moments later. Objects would move inexplicably, rearranging themselves into unsettling patterns. The whispers were constant, insidious, sowing seeds of doubt and discord, turning loved ones against each other through manufactured paranoia. This wasn't hauntings. It was a deliberate, calculated campaign to drive its victims to the brink of madness. Consider the experience of a lone traveler, lost on a fog-bound country road. The silence is absolute, broken only by the labored breathing of the car's engine. Suddenly, a figure appears by the roadside, a woman in a tattered dress, her face obscured by a veil of matted hair. She doesn't speak, but her presence radiates an overwhelming sense of despair. The driver, against their better judgment, stops. As they approach, the figure turns, and the veil is lifted, revealing not a face, but a gaping, empty void. The driver slams on the gas, tires spinning in the mud. The image of that terrifying emptiness burned into their memory, a chilling reminder of what lurks just beyond the veil of perception. The notion of a haunted object in these rural legends often manifests in subtler, more insidious ways. It's not always a blood-soaked axe or a cursed amulet. Sometimes, it's something far more mundane, like an antique mirror. In one village, the residents avoided a particular shop that housed an ornate, gilded mirror. They said that anyone who gazed into it for too long would see not their reflection, but a distorted, nightmarish version of themselves, their features twisted into expressions of pure agony. More disturbingly, some claimed to see figures standing behind them in the reflection, figures that weren't there when they turned around. Their spectral presence a constant, chilling reminder of something watching from the other side. The transcript speaks of an ancient pact, a bargain struck with forces that predate human understanding. This wasn't a fleeting encounter. It was a covenant, a binding agreement that has left an indelible stain on the land and its inhabitants. Imagine a village where the harvest has always been bountiful, where the livestock are always healthy, but at a terrible cost. The price is paid not in coin, but in souls, a slow, ritualistic feeding that keeps the malevolent entity appeased. The elders of such a village would bear the burden of this secret, their faces etched with the weariness of ages, their eyes holding the haunted wisdom of those who have stared into the abyss and seen it stare back. The sound of creaking doors is often dismissed as the settling of an old house, but in these places, it's a different kind of sound entirely. It's a preamble, a signal that something is about to stir from its slumber. In one village, the old church doors, heavy oak bound with iron, would creak open at precisely midnight, even when bolted from the inside. No wind, no earthly force could explain it. It was as if the building itself was sighing, exhaling the darkness that it contained. Those who dared to venture inside spoke of a cold that pierced the very marrow of their bones, a silence that wasn't empty, but pregnant with unspoken malevolence, a palpable presence that made the hairs on their arms stand on end. The stories of livestock acting strangely are not just about animal instinct. They are about a primal fear that transcends human comprehension. In a village plagued by an unseen entity, the animals became the first to sense the encroaching doom. Dogs would refuse to enter certain rooms, their bodies rigid with terror, emitting low, mournful growls at empty spaces. Horses would become skittish, rearing and whinnying at phantoms only they could perceive. Birds would fall silent, their cheerful chirping replaced by an eerie stillness that spoke volumes. This animalistic dread was a harbinger, a warning sign that the veil between worlds was thinning, and something ancient and hungry was beginning to stir. The feeling of being watched, of an invisible gaze upon you, is a recurring theme in these narratives. It's not just a fleeting sensation, it's a pervasive atmosphere, a sense of being under constant surveillance by something that has no eyes. In a village nestled deep within the mountains, residents spoke of a shadow man who would appear at the edge of their vision, a tall, impossibly thin figure that never made a sound. He wouldn't attack or confront. He would simply be there, a silent observer. His presence was a form of psychological torture, a constant reminder that they were not alone, and that the entity watching them was utterly alien and incomprehensible. The concept of dried blood in these stories often goes beyond mere violence. It symbolizes a lingering ancient stain, a historical residue of dark deeds. In a remote farmhouse, the original owners had reportedly performed a ritualistic sacrifice generations ago to ensure prosperity. The blood, though long dried, was said to have seeped into the very foundations of the house, a constant, invisible presence. Visitors would report inexplicable chills, the scent of iron in the air even when no metal was present, and a pervasive sense of unease that grew stronger the longer they stayed, as if the house itself was a tomb breathing out the remnants of its bloody past. Imagine a crossroads, not just a junction of roads, but a metaphysical nexus, where the threads of fate are twisted and tangled. In many of these tales, crossroads are depicted as places of immense power, but not always benevolent. They are where pacts are made, where spirits are summoned, and where the veil between the living and the dead is thinnest. A traveler who finds themselves at such a place after midnight might hear disembodied voices, caught in an eternal loop, or see fleeting apparitions that vanish into the mist, a chilling reminder that some intersections are best left untraveled. The weight of secrets in these isolated communities is a suffocating force. Everyone knows something is wrong, but no one dares to speak it aloud, their silence a form of protection, or perhaps a form of complicity. The elder of one village, his face a roadmap of sorrow, finally broke his silence, whispering of the thing in the well. He described how, decades ago, a darkness had manifested, a presence that fed on their fear. To appease it, they had offered it sacrifices, not of animals, but of something far more precious, something that left a permanent scar on their collective conscience. His voice, barely a whisper, carried the PR-found weight of his confession. When the transcript mentions cracked mirrors, it's not just about an aesthetic flaw. It symbolizes a fractured reality, a broken perception of truth. In a dilapidated manner, a large ornate mirror was said to be cursed. Its surface was riddled with fine cracks, like a spiderweb spun from despair. Those who looked into it would see their own reflection distorted, their features warped into monstrous caricatures. More terrifying still, they would sometimes see glimpses of other realities, fleeting images of a world bathed in an unholy light, a realm of pure shadow and screaming phantoms, a testament to a reality that had been shattered. The metaphor of crows, often seen as omens of death, takes on a more sinister dimension in these rural legends. They are not just harbingers, they are watchers, silent sentinels of the encroaching darkness. In a village plagued by an unseen entity, the crows would gather in unnerving numbers, their obsidian eyes fixed on the houses, their caws a dissonant chorus that presaged misfortune. They would sit on rooftops, on fence posts, on the branches of dead trees, their collective gaze a palpable weight, a silent announcement that the forces of the other side were watching, waiting for their moment to strike. The lingering scent of cold ashes, a common motif in tales of destruction, here signifies something far more ancient and malevolent than a mere fire. It's the residue of rituals performed long ago, of dark energies that have seeped into the very earth. In a remote forest clearing, where a standing stone stood as a silent sentinel, the ground was perpetually cold, and the air carried the faint, acrid scent of old fires. Locals believed that this was the site of ancient sacrifices, a place where pacts were made with entities from beyond, and the lingering scent of ash was a constant reminder of the dark bargains struck there. The concept of the haunted object often boils down to an item that has absorbed the negative energy of its surroundings or its owner. In one village, a child's rocking chair, found in an abandoned house, would rock on its own, its rhythmic creaking filling the silence of the decaying home. The wood was worn smooth, as if by constant use, yet no one had been seen using it for decades. Visitors would report feeling an inexplicable sadness when near it, a profound sense of loss that seemed to emanate from the very fibers of the wood, a chilling testament to the unresolved grief trapped within. The terror in these stories often stems from the mundane becoming monstrous, a perfectly ordinary object, imbued with a dark history or cursed by unseen forces, can become a focal point of dread. In one village, an antique music box, found in the attic of a supposedly empty house, would play a haunting off-key melody at random intervals, even though it had no discernible winding mechanism. The tune itself was deeply unsettling, evoking a sense of profound melancholy and an unspoken tragedy, a lullaby sung by a spectral mother to a child lost to the darkness. The whispers that emanate from these forgotten places are not merely sounds. They are fragments of lost souls, echoes of terror that refuse to fade. In a village that had been abandoned for decades, the wind whistling through the broken windows would carry what sounded like hushed conversations, fragments of pleas and warnings that seemed to come from within the very walls of the decaying structures. These were the voices of those who had met their end of air, trapped in an eternal loop of their final moments, their spectral lamentations, a chilling soundtrack to the encroaching decay. The feeling of dread that permeates these rural settings is often tied to the natural world itself, becoming corrupted. The woods are not just trees, they are sentient entities. The fields not just arable land, but vessels of ancient dark energy. In one village, the crops would grow unnaturally tall and thick, forming a dense, impenetrable maze, and the berries that grew there were said to have a taste that was both intoxicatingly sweet and deeply unsettling, a deceptive lure leading unsuspecting souls deeper into the encroaching darkness. The stories of unexplained phenomena in these remote locales often involve a perversion of natural cycles. The sun might set too early, casting long, oppressive shadows, or the moon might refuse to appear on the darkest nights, leaving the villages shrouded in an unnatural, profound blackness. This manipulation of the celestial clockwork was seen not as a meteorological anomaly, but as a deliberate act by the malevolent forces that held sway, a way of plunging the world into a deeper, more receptive state for their dark machinations. The transcript's mention of a cursed road speaks to the idea that certain pathways are intrinsically linked to misfortune. Imagine a stretch of asphalt winding through desolate countryside, a road where accidents are far more frequent than statistically possible. Locals would avoid it after dark, speaking of phantom headlights that appeared out of nowhere, of a strange, disorienting fog that would descend without warning, and of a chilling silence that fell upon the car, as if the very air was being stolen. The folklore surrounding these isolated villages is rich with tales of entities that feed on specific emotions. Fear is the most obvious, but despair, loneliness, and even uncontrolled rage can also become sustenance for the darkness. In one village, a particularly troubled family experienced escalating misfortunes, their lives unraveling with terrifying speed. It was said that a shadow parasite had attached itself to their lineage, feeding on their negativity, growing stronger with each successive tragedy, a chilling symbiosis of despair and malevolence. The persistent feeling of being watched, that invisible gaze, is a hallmark of these rural hauntings. It's a psychic pressure, a constant awareness that you are not alone, and that whatever is observing you has no form, no face, but an undeniable, chilling presence. In a village where many homes stood empty, residents would report seeing movement in the windows of these deserted houses, not just fleeting shadows, but the distinct impression of figures standing just inside, observing the living with an ancient, cold curiosity, their silence more terrifying than any scream. The presence of specific recurring symbols in these narratives, broken crosses, dried blood, cold ashes, serves as a grim Rosetta Stone, unlocking the hidden language of rural terror. A broken cross, found abandoned in a field, signifies not just religious neglect, but a spiritual void, an invitation for darker forces to take root. These symbols are not mere decoration. They are the markers left by entities that operate in the liminal spaces, their presence announced through the desecration of the sacred and the lingering residue of their malevolence. The stories of specific locations within these villages becoming focal points of horror. An old well, a dilapidated church, a specific stretch of road suggest that the land itself can become saturated with dark energy. This isn't just about a single ghost. It's about a pervasive atmosphere, a spiritual contamination that affects anyone who dares to trespass. These places become anchors for the supernatural, points where the veil between worlds is permanently thinned, allowing the echoes of dread to seep into the consciousness of the living. The narrative of a cursed object often extends beyond a single item to an entire collection, as if a dark aura has permeated a household or even a small community. In one instance, an antique shop in a forgotten town became known for its peculiar items, each one exuding a subtle yet undeniable sense of unease. Customers would report feeling inexplicably drawn to certain objects, only to experience a series of unfortunate events after purchasing them, as if they had unknowingly taken home a piece of the shop's inherent malevolence. The chilling effectiveness of these rural horror stories lies in their ability to tap into our deepest, most primal fears, the fear of isolation, the fear of the unknown lurking just beyond our perception, and the fear of the familiar turning against us. The silence of these villages is not peaceful. It is a pregnant silence, filled with the unspoken horrors that have transpired, a testament to the darkness that can fester in the most unexpected, seemingly tranquil places. The chilling whispers from these forgotten hamlets are more than just spectral voices. They are warnings, echoes from a reality that lies just beyond our comprehension, a realm where the shadows dance and ancient entities slumber. They remind us that the veneer of civilization is thin, and beneath the placid surface of rural life, a primordial darkness can always find purchase, feeding on isolation and fear. Each story, each whisper, is an invitation to confront the unknown, to feel the prickle of dread, and to acknowledge the unsettling truth that some places hold secrets too dark to ever truly be forgotten. As you sit in the quiet of your own space, perhaps a rustle outside your window or a creak from the floorboards above will seem more significant. Do you feel this dark message was meant for you? Share your unease in the comments below. Every soul that joins feeds the voice that whispers from the darkness, deepening our understanding of the abyss that surrounds us. Until we meet again, tread carefully where the shadows lie deepest.